Welcome back to the Great Alaskan Adventure featuring the Mighty Ford Ranger, Part 2. Here we are in Alaska. A quick recap. Life lesson number 1. When you pick up hitchhikers and try to transport them across international borders, please make sure that their visas have not expired. So we got to Alaska, we spent the night in a hotel, we said goodbye to that nice young lady who got her visa sorted out, and my brother and I were headed down to the Tourniquet arm of Alaska, south of Anchorage, where we were going to, in search of the elusive Dolly Varden. This is a volcano on the Alaskan Peninsula. Here we are in Homer, Alaska. Here's the ocean, and we slept on this beach. Next. Here we are setting up our camping stuff right on the beach. And while we were down here, we ran into a lady that had competed in the, as a matter of fact, she was the first woman to complete the Iditarod sled dog race. And she brought in the red lantern, which means she was last place, but she had made it. And when she had done it, it was some crazy thing like 15 or 17 days or something like that it took her. She invited us. She felt sorry for us because we were cooking ramen over the fire, and she invited us over for, she had an RV. She made us a nice fish dinner. Okay, once again, I think these pictures may be out of order, but this is about 11 p.m. The sun has not set yet, and we're about ready to go into our tent, maybe journal a little bit, read a little bit, and then fall asleep. Next. As you can see, we weren't the only ones. What in the world? Now, this is some fabulous picture of me and my brother and Mount McKinley, Denali. Next. But that's another story. Back to Homer. Here's some barnacles on the dock. Next. And a kelp that's stuck to a clam that we found on the beach. And here I am with our catch of the day. These two fish right here, the small ones, these are the ones my brother caught. The large ones are the ones that I caught. What are you doing?
Showing that you have hair.
Oh. Yeah. And here we are on our way back to Anchorage. A buddy of ours flew into Alaska to spend a week with us, so we were going to the airport to pick him up. Next. So here we are with our buddy Denny. This is our buddy Denny right here. And he's a big fisherman. And we're on the Kenai River in search of sockeye salmon. They're running. And when we arrived, there was a whole lineup of people fishing shoulder to shoulder, catching salmon. So we went down and joined them. We asked them what they were fishing with. They said orange yarn and a hook. So we went to the bait store, got orange yarn and a hook, stood next to them, immediately latched into a fish. Somebody next to me grabbed it with a net, and voila, we were already on the board with a nice 5-pound sockeye salmon. We got tired of standing in the crowd, so we walked upstream a ways. And here we are, probably sitting in somebody's front yard trespassing, fishing for sockeye salmon on the Kenai River. My brother here is, maybe this is the epic battle that he had. Remember, we have our Minnesota gear. Look at the river, it's big, the fish are big. We got our line snapped like crazy. We're running out of yarn, we're running out of hooks, running out of line. So my brother battles this sockeye salmon into shore, and it takes off again and runs with the line. He battles it back and runs off again, and then he finally battles it back, and the fish is so exhausted it flops over on its side. The hook leaves its mouth and it swims away. That was just one of our stories. Our buddy Denny latched into a nice sockeye salmon, and he was not going to take no for an answer. So he battled the thing, and it almost had all of its line out. So he jumped in the river after it, and he's floating downstream with his pole up in the air, reeling it in as he goes. About 400 yards down the stream, he ran into all those people fishing shoulder to shoulder. Somebody netted it for him, and he comes running back, dripping wet, with a nice 5-pound sockeye salmon. We kept 3 or 4 of them, and over the next 3 or 4 days, we ate the heck out of sockeye salmon. Was it good. Next. Here's our buddy Denny. Like I said, he's a big fisherman. It was not king salmon season, but he was catching some kings and releasing them. I think here is Montana Creek where we're at, and he caught a red salmon. Next. Which we were able to catch and eat. Next. And here we are on Dolly Varden Lake, looking like we're all full because we probably just feasted on a couple of sockeye salmon. Next. That's Dolly Varden Lake again. The next morning we got up and went for our run, and then we were headed to Fairbanks. Well, actually we were headed to Denali. Well, we're taking care of personal hygiene here, and then we're going to head up to Denali. Next. And here we are on the road. Look at that. It's like a postcard. This stuff is so unbelievably beautiful. Next. And here we are on Montana Creek with the red salmon that our buddy Danny caught. That's my brother Dave and our buddy Danny. Next. We arrived at Denali National Park and Preserve. But more importantly, here's the passenger side door of the Mighty Ford Ranger and the whole back end. That back tailgate is just so nice with that red lettering. I really miss it. Next. And what do we see when we enter the park? A grizzly bear. When you get to Denali, they put you on school buses and they make you ride the school bus into the park. And so here we are on a school bus seeing the sights. Next. And there's the bear looking back at us. And here, a couple of cubs along with their mother. And here we are at Eielson Visitor Center, kind of in the middle of the park at the base of Mount McKinley. But as you can see in the background, it's kind of cloudy. We didn't get to see the mountain at all. It was too cloudy. Note to any people going to Denali, chances of you seeing the mountain is not very good because it's usually socked in with the clouds. Next. Here's what it looks like. Next. We camped overnight in the park. There's some Dall sheep, those white specks up there. Some Dall sheep. Next. And then we camped overnight in the park, got rained on, and then we headed up to Fairbanks. This is, if you've ever read the story Into the Wild or seen the movie Into the Wild, this is about the place where it happened. It's in the vicinity of where the guy went into the wild and ended up dying. I took the picture because I love the light shining through here. But in this area between Denali and Fairbanks is where the kid did it. This was, of course, several years before he went into the wild. Next. Next. And here we are. Once we arrived in Fairbanks, the rain let up after about midnight. We pulled up alongside the road, threw our tent in underneath some highline wires, and camped her out. This day we were going to get up and go to a hot springs that had been used by natives and gold rushers for hundreds of years. And here on our way up, we saw this moose. Our buddy Denny was so excited, he jumped out of the car to get a close-up. Next. Okay. And here we are at the hot springs. This water right here is natural hot springs, and it comes out of the ground at about 160 degrees, so they have to cool it with fresh cold water in order for you to use it, bathe in it or whatever. And people have been doing this for years. We went and soaked in about 107 degree water, which is extremely hot, for about an hour. Next. Oh, and here we are competing at the 10K in Fairbanks. This is me right here. Our buddy Denny was way in front of us, way in front of me, and my brother was graciously taking photos of us. Next. Here I am about to finish. Next. And here I am screaming across the finish line. Oops, that one got upside down. Next. So we spent the rest of the day hiking or visiting the pipeline. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be crawling around on the pipeline, but we did. We didn't know any better. And this is our buddy Denny on the Great Alaskan Pipeline. Next, this pipeline stretches across Alaska all the way from the Arctic Ocean down to Cordova or some Valdez is where it goes through. Here we are, getting some pictures at the pipeline. Next. Our buddy Denny was on his way back to the States, the lower 48. So we took him back to Anchorage. This is Anchorage. While we were waiting, we took in a movie. There wasn't a lot of choice, so we ended up in Adventures for Babysitting. They hated it, and I laughed the whole time. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Next. Here we are, before we take our buddy Denny to the airport. This is my brother, and this is me with my new 10K shirt on. After we dropped off Denny, we went down to Valdez, which is south of Anchorage, but just the other side of Homer, the other across the east of Homer. And here is Exit Glacier. It leads to the largest ice field in all of North America. And we took a little hike up here, and you'll see some pictures. Here's the base of Exit Glacier right here. It says steep, be careful. You didn't climb up the ice, you climbed up the side of the hill. Next. On our way up, we met a guy carrying skis on his back, and we asked him why was he taking skis. He said he was attempting to break the world record for the most days, the most consecutive months of skiing, and he was into his 10th year or something like that of skiing every month. And he would, in the summertime, go to this great big ice field to ski down some slopes and count it as another month. Here's my brother taking an arduous climb up to the ice field. Next. Here's some of the stuff that's growing on the glacier. After that, my brother and I were not going to be denied. We went back to Denali National Park. We were going to get to see Mount McKinley, darn it, no matter how long we had to stay there. And here is a picture of when we first started to see the mountain. It didn't happen immediately, but we got all excited because you can see the white showing, the snow showing right here. And as we looked above the clouds, you could see the peak of Mount McKinley right there. Next. So this is what it looked like when we got to the park. Socked in, the same way it was before, lots of clouds. We are camping out. We're going to backpack along the base of Mount McKinley. Next. So here we are just outside the Eielson Visitor Center, camped up around a hill so nobody can see our campsite, because that's one of the rules. You can't be visible from the road, and you got to be at least a half mile off the road. And here we are. The next morning we got up and the sun came out, so we were very excited. Look at it. We're going to get to see the mountain. It's going to be fabulous. My brother was all excited. And it got cloudy. So here's what we're going to do. That day, we're going to walk along this glacier right here. This is a stream, a glacial stream, that's coming down out of the mountain here. This is a glacier, all covered with green that's growing over the top of it. There's ice under there. And we started walking on this glacier, and it was kind of like walking up and down and up and down and up and down, and you're walking through this much soft stuff, so it was really hard to walk in. And then you'd get to a place at the bottom of a hill, and it'd be squishy and wet. We finally decided it's easier to walk along rocks along a river, and so we ended up walking along the river all day instead of where we thought we were going to walk. So here you see, this is the next day, and the sun was out. Here's the road. We had to hike back to the road to get the school bus back to the Mighty Ford Ranger. But here you can see what I'm talking about, the bumpiness. It's like moon bumpy stuff. That's the glacier. And where you see this smooth stuff that looks nice, it's really not that nice. It's willow thicket up to your armpits or above your head. And the only way to get through that is if you follow a game trail, and that's what we did on our way out. And as we were coming out, we saw a great big caribou sitting in a mud hole, and we got within 20 feet of it. It just looked at us as we passed by on the path. But this is the bumpy stuff and the smooth stuff. Between there is where the river is, and that's where we camped overnight. All day long as we walked along the river, there were caribou walking along the river. They were going the same way we were, the opposite way we were, on the same side of the river, on the opposite side of the river. They didn't seem to mind us at all. But as we approached where we were going to stay for the night, the sun started coming out. The clouds started to disappear, and all of a sudden, we spotted it above the clouds, the top of Mount McKinley. Next. There it is. So we set up our camp, and then we decided to get some more pictures of the mountain. So we climbed up onto the glacier, and as we climbed on up to the glacier, there was a pond up there, and a great big bull moose eating out of the pond. We startled him as we were going up to get some pictures of Mount McKinley. There he is, running away. We had our cameras put away. We didn't think we were going to see anything fabulous. Look at it. And here we are camped along the shores of that glacial stream. In the park, you have to carry bear-proof food containers, and you put your your food pack away from your campsite. So just in case a bear smells anything, they don't come sniffing around your tent. But we angled our tent so we could look out the window and see the top of Mount McKinley. It was pretty fabulous. Next. Here are some of the pictures. This is from our campsite. Next. And more. Here are some of the fabulous pictures we got in the 2 days that we got to see the mountain. Next. There we are. This one, I think my brother's on my shoulders taking this picture so he could get the reflection of the mountain in the pond. Next. Look at it. Pretty fabulous, huh? Yeah, took those myself. The next morning we got up, crossed the stream in the morning because the stream was smaller in the morning than it was during the day. As the day warms up, more glacier melts and the stream becomes bigger. Overnight it slows down again, and so early in the morning we crossed the stream and we spotted breakfast, some more willow ptarmigans. Here we are standing on the road waiting for the bus, and once again I explained earlier that we camped down here along this river, and this is the bumpy glacier here, and we got a chance to see that. We walked through all of this, as I mentioned, not very easy to walk through unless you had a game path to walk on, and we had to wait. till the bus came. Next. And we said, okay, oh, here's where we camped, right here. Right at the tip of this little spot right here. And then we crossed the stream the next morning. Boom, we're on our way. Back to Homer. This is about 3 in the morning when the sun's starting to come up. The sun went down over here and came up over here. This is in July in Alaska. Next. Back to Mount McKinley. We stood on the road, said, okay, that's enough pictures. But then every time we'd wait for a little while too long, we'd take another picture. Next. As you can see. Next. And next. Okay, finally the bus came, picked us up, and not any more than a half a mile down the road, this is the closest bear we saw since we hopped on this bus. In the 2 times we've ridden the bus, it's as close as we got to a bear. He was walking through the same area we had walked earlier that morning. Next. There he is. Good thing we were in the bus. And here are caribou that we would see all along this bus thing. These are what we were walking next to on the stream the day before. Next. Caribou everywhere. And look how fat their bellies are. And this is where we would, oh, and look at that bear. We snuck up on him using some shag carpet. Next. And a beautiful doll sheep. And a big fat caribou. Look at him. Next. And a moose with 2 little moose. A big fat moose. And here my brother and I are dog sledding through Mount McKinley National Park, or Denali National Park. Next. And here we are taking a picture down after we had climbed up. And another picture while we were out. Another willow ptarmigan. And the aurora borealises. So, that was Denali. We were back on our way to Fairbanks because we were going to go to the Arctic Circle. North of Fairbanks is something called the James Dalton Highway, and it will take you all the way to the Arctic Ocean. However, it's a private road past Coldfoot. Coldfoot is the end of the James Dalton Highway. After that, you need a permit. So we decided we would go to the Arctic Circle, we'd camp, and then we'd spend the day above the Arctic Circle, maybe go all the way up to Coldfoot. Here we are. Look at it. A full frontal of the mighty Ford Ranger. Careful. Don't hurt yourself. This is about 10, 11 o'clock at night. You can see the sun setting. We're on our way to the Arctic Circle. This is the road or the pipeline. They kind of parallel one another, and you can see them together in many of these photos. Next. The sun went down. That might be the moon coming up. Next. And here we are. We arrived at the Arctic Circle about 1:30 at night, and you can still see a dim glow in the background. And here we are at 66 degrees, 33 minutes north latitude, right here along the Arctic Circle. We pulled the mighty Ford Ranger up in front of the sign. We laid down on the ground on top of a blue tarp, and we slept at the Arctic Circle. The next morning we got up and we headed, first of all, we defiled the sign. August 10th, 1987, there we are. This sign is now in the Smithsonian Institute. You can check for our names on the back. They've replaced the sign since 1987. So here we are spending the day above the Arctic Circle in search of the elusive Arctic grayling, pound for pound, the most ferocious fighting fish known to man. And you can see the road, the James W. Dalton Highway. It looks like something's traveling on it. And you can see the pipeline. Look how beautiful it is. There he is, my brother, the fisherman. He took his Panther Martin, the most deadly lure in his repertoire, and he caught that Arctic grayling. See the boots? I have those boots in my garage. They still work. Next. And this is Coldfoot. This is the post office, this grocery store, and the restaurant. And this is where in 1987 I spent $2 for a beer, and not a beer, $2 for a Coke, and $5 for a hamburger. Unheard of. Oh, so we went back to the Arctic Circle, slept overnight, and the next morning we got up and I ran down the hill to warm up and jump in this 54-degree water. My brother didn't want to clean up, so he drove the truck down. Now, think about this. We had already been out on the road for a while. I was stinky enough to take a jump into some freezing cold water. He did not. So he was smelly, and he would continue to smell. Keep track of this. So here we are, leaving the Arctic, heading back. Well, we were on our way out of Alaska. We were heading back south, all the way to the Skagway, where we were going to pick up the Marine Highway. Here's the Yukon River, where we paid $2 a gallon for gas, by the way, back in 1987. Unheard of. We're on our way out of Alaska. We're just camping alongside the road. We're playing hacky sack till 11 o'clock at night, going in the tent, journaling, reading, falling asleep, getting up, driving some more. We're headed to the southeast part of Alaska, where we're going to catch the Alaska Marine Highway. This is our thing. This is just like in a place where they pile up gravel alongside the road. Maintenance area. Oh, and here we are again, on our way out of Alaska. Who's taking the picture, you ask? Well, life lesson number 2. Well, guess what happened to us? When we were at the border, there were some hitchhikers that said, hey, we're going to Canada. Could you give us a ride? And we said, well, we have all this room on the expansive bench seat of the mighty Ford Ranger, so sure, why don't you two people pile in? Throw your stuff in the back. There's all kinds of room in the mighty Ford Ranger for your stuff, and we'll take you to Canada. Well, lo and behold, we got to Canada, and guess what? We got pulled over. They put us in the waiting line. About a half hour later, they came out and said, you guys can go. Life lesson number 2, don't pick up hitchhikers when you're crossing international borders if you don't know what's in their backpacks. So here we are in Skagway, Alaska. We decided to hike the Chilkoot Trail. This is where in the 1800s, 1880s, when the gold rush was on, this is where people would be dropped off and they'd hike this trail to get to the Yukon River. This is my brother and I. As you can see, I've got my favorite coaching shorts on and my red flannel shirt. Next. So here we are hiking up the Chilkoot Trail. It's about 13 miles to the top. Started at sea level and it tops out at about 23 or 2,400 feet. So we're gaining elevation, maybe 3,000 feet. We're gaining elevation every step for 13 miles. Next. Along the way, there are lots of other people. We met some people that were, carrying bags under their arms. They didn't even have backpacks. They were just hustling over the mountain. My brother and I thought we'd take 3 days. We also met a young lady who was a radio personality in Canada. She worked for the Canadian broadcast system. Next. And here we are, right where you would see these historic pictures of people one after another with picks on their back and pans on their back and big backpacks full of stuff on their back, one step after the other, climbing up through the snow, up and up and up around here. This is the most common trail because it's less steep. my brother and I decided we'd take the shortcut and take the steeper trail. Next. So here we are. We're headed there. This is where you usually see the snow pictures of all the gold rushers. Next. And here we are climbing up. There's my brother. Bouldering over rocks all the way up. And here we are at the top with my favorite red flannel shirt on. Who's taking the picture, you ask? Well, just so happens on our way up we heard a helicopter. And when we got to the top, there sitting at the top was the lady radio personality that we had met. She had broken her ankle on her way up, and the helicopter was coming to rescue her. Here we are in Alaska. So we just climbed up the Chilkoot Trail. Once you get over the pass, you're now in a provincial park in Canada. And this waterway will lead to the Yukon River. It's hundreds of miles to the Yukon River from here. But people would put in their boats here or make rafts and start floating up to the Yukon for the gold rush. Next. Here's what you see when you're hiking through there. A bunch of trash laying around. Artifacts. These are leftover things from the gold rush, boat frame that they'd wrap canvas around, cans and all kinds of other debris. You can't take it. You can't pick it up. You can't clean it up because it's considered historic value. Next. See what I mean? Look at it. It looks like a garbage dump. But those are artifacts not to be disturbed. So I think back to when you saw me cleaning up in this 54-degree chilly stream. My brother had not cleaned up now. It's probably been 10 days since then. And so this is where I took him down to the lake and I tossed him in. This is Bennett Lake at the end of the trail. This is our last night on the trail, and we're heading back to Skagway to catch the ferry down to Prince Rupert, British Columbia. There's our campsite on Lake Bennett. Next. And here, and there it is. The White Pass Narrow Gauge Railroad. This is a snowblower that was parked up there, and we monkeyed around in there for a while. We had only about a mile or two to hike to the road, and then we had to wait for a bus ride in the afternoon. And we had traveled kind of light. Ramen and crackers was about all we had, and some granola for breakfast. So we were kind of hungry. There's the White Pass train. So here we are standing at log cabin waiting for the bus to come and pick us up. Do we look hungry? Because we are hungry. And I have a little lesson, life lesson number 3 for you. When you are hungry, never go to an all-you-can-eat spaghetti place. My brother and I went to an all-you-can-eat spaghetti place. He ate 4 plates, I ate 3, and we were miserable until way after midnight. But that was okay because we snuck into the campground, put up our tent, took it down before sunrise, and didn't have to pay. So we could afford to rent these hogs where we went and disturbed the dead at a cemetery. And took them out on a joyride up to the waterfalls on the border. And then we waited for the Malaspina to come and pick us up. A 400 plus foot vessel, part of the Alaska Marine Highway System. There's Skagway, I think, maybe. Next. Here it is. We're on the water. The Mighty Ford Ranger is carefully tucked away in the ramps below, and we're camping out on the deck. There we are, traveling the inside passage of southeast Alaska from Skagway to Prince Rupert, British Columbia. Next. Here's where we would sleep. They have heaters up on the roof to keep you warm, and then they just have lounge chairs. You put your stuff on a lounge chair, and that's yours for the day. And there is a bunch of people sleeping, not just us. Next. And that's what it looks like. Beautiful scenery. What? Is that it, you say? Ha ha! But there's more.